Welcome to A Student of Leadership, a micro-podcast where leaders are made one habit at a time. Hosted by Rob Adams, a leadership veteran with 30 years of experience, this podcast explores key concepts that define exceptional leadership. Each episode delves into a powerful word or strategy, offering practical insights and real-world stories. Whether you're just starting out or an experienced executive, join Rob as he guides you in learning, growing, and leading with purpose.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to A Student of Leadership. I'm Rob Adams, and this is episode 70, The Refill Discipline. Now, this week's play is schedule 30 minutes with the person who refills you the most. I want you to hold that and keep it in mind as we go through this episode today, and we will get back to it. This week, we're talking about the most overlooked leadership discipline in any organization and the one most directly determines whether a leader is still leading at 60 or burned out at 50. The discipline is about refilling. What do you do structurally to stay full enough to keep pouring? On Monday, the leadership newsletter on Substack opened the week with The Spoon, the fifth element of the place-setting framework, returning for its second pass. The first pass back in May was about pouring into others without keeping score. This pass takes a harder question. Who pours into the leader doing the pouring? And if you've not read it, a link is in the show notes. Friday's Breaking Bread on LinkedIn has the play from this week worth running before the weekend, and that drops at 6:45. Link is also in the show notes. And if you missed last week's episode, 69 was on The Fork at its second pass. It was about the discipline of feed forward and what great leaders absorb that average leaders reject. That episode is in your feed and is worth going back for. Today, I want to start with a personal story. It's, talking about the place-setting framework. It didn't happen in a conference room or boardroom. Didn't start in graduate school. It didn't start in some leadership development program I was going through. It started at my mom's kitchen table, decades before I had the language to name it what I was watching. My mother ran a catering business. It was small. She also cared for her aging parents who moved into our home, and I remember I was in my teenage years, and they lived with us through their lasting years. She led our family through really hard seasons that honestly I only fully understood much later in life, none of which she ever called leadership. She just called it living. And what I watched her do day after day, year after year, was to pour into her catering clients, into my grandparents, her parents, into our entire family, into the staff that worked her events occasionally, into the neighbors who showed up at the back door when something was wrong. The capacity she had, the steadiness, the warmth that did not run out was not a personality trait. I know that now, and at the time I thought she was just like that. Now I know it was a discipline. In fact, she did three things structurally that I didn't understand at the time, and now I can recognize as the load-bearing work of staying full enough to keep pouring. The first was that she protected a few specific relationships in her life that were not about caretaking. She had 3 or 4 people, no more, that she would talk on the phone to on a Sunday afternoon, and the conversations were not about my grandparents or what was for dinner or how the catering job had gone. It was just a personal connection, a real friendship. In fact, she protected those calls in a way that she did not protect almost anything else. They got cut for almost nothing. The second was that she had a routine in the early morning before any of us were up, where she sat at the kitchen window with coffee, sometimes reading, sometimes not, 20 minutes, whatever else collapsed in our house on any given day, including some genuinely hard days, that 20 minutes was untouched. In fact, I asked her about it once when I was older. She said she had figured out that if she didn't have those 20 minutes, that the day would have her instead of the other way around. And the third thing was that she accepted help, specifically from specific people. When my aunt offered to take my grandparents for an afternoon, my mother didn't perform reluctance. She said thank you and went and did something that filled her back up. She did not have a theological or self-sacrifice that prevented her from receiving care. She understood intuitively that receiving was the precondition for giving. She had to have both to be able to pour back in. Now, I did not understand any of this until I was deep into my own career, watching leaders around me hit walls in their 40s and 50s and realizing that what was breaking them was not the workload. It was their own depletion. They had been pouring for years without ever consciously refilling for themselves. And eventually the well ran out, and they didn't have anywhere to draw from. Now, if this content is resonating for you, that's why I built the Leadership Table newsletter, because it goes deeper every Monday morning. One element of the place-setting framework, one principle, one play you can actually run that same week. It is on Substack, free to subscribe, and this week's Pieces on the Spoon is worth reading. Link is in your show notes. Now let's talk about 3 categories every leader refills in. The leaders I've watched sustain their leadership over the decades, the ones who didn't flame out, didn't become bitter, didn't become hollow versions of who they were at 35, all kept refilling in 3 specific categories. The first is relational. Not their team, not the people who depend on them at work, but people who do not need anything from them. A few specific people whose presence in their life is reciprocal, where the leader is sometimes the giver and sometimes the receiver, and where the dynamic is not about title or transaction. See, most leaders, especially senior ones, gradually lose this piece. Their entire relational life becomes about what they can do for someone else. The cost shows up as cynicism in their 50s. Now, the second is physical, not optimization, not biohacking, just the foundational work of treating their body like the vehicle that has to carry them through the next 20 years of their leadership. This means sleep, good sleep, deep sleep, real food, movement, time outside. Most leaders skip this in their 30s to climb. Most of them pay for it in their 50s when their body forces them to confront what they ignored. And I relate to this so personally, everyone. And the third is reflective. The space to actually think without producing anything, without solving anything, without a device in hand. The leaders who keep growing in their 60s almost universally protect time for this. The leaders who plateau in their 40s almost universally do not. The leadership coaching substitutes for 30 minutes a week of a leader thinking honestly about what is actually going on in their work and their life. The hardest truth in this conversation is that the leaders most likely to skip refilling are the ones doing most of the pouring. Senior leaders, leaders in caregiving roles outside of work, leaders in extended pressure cycles, leaders whose identity is built around being the one who gives. The leaders whose teams need them most are the leaders most likely to neglect what would let them keep showing up. Now, that is not moral failing. That is a structural pattern, and it has to be solved structurally and not motivationally. No one is going to schedule the refill for you. The leader doing the pouring is the leader who has to build the refill into their calendar with the same seriousness and commitment that they build everything else. Now, AI is moving real operational drain from leaders. Inbox triage, scheduling, document work. The work that used to consume hours can increasingly be handled by tools. What AI cannot reduce is the relational drain, the hard conversation, the team member who's struggling, the customer issue that actually requires care. As AI takes over the operational piece, the relational becomes a higher percentage of what is left, which means the refill discipline matters more, not less. Who pours into you? Not professionally, personally, reciprocally. If you cannot answer that question, the answer is the answer. The Leadership Newsletter is on Substack every Monday morning, bright and early. And this week's Piece on the Spoon and the Refill Discipline is there waiting for you. Link is in the show notes. Friday's Breaking Bread on LinkedIn has the play from this week worth running before you enter your weekend, and you will also find that in the show notes. Now, next week, we close out Q2 with the napkin at its second pass. The same things that destroy trust, the trust audit most leaders skip, and what skipping, it costs them. It is the right note to close this quarter on. Please subscribe on Apple, Spotify, or any of your favorite podcast networks. Both links are in the show notes. And if this episode gave you something, please share it with a leader who's doing too much of the pouring and not enough of the refilling. There are more of them than there should be. Run the play this week. Schedule 30 minutes with the person who refills you. Pick that person in your life who really refills you. Make sure that 30 minutes is this week. And it's not about venting to receive. This is the spoon at its second pass. That is the work. Thank you, everyone, for listening to another episode of A Student of Leadership. I'm Rob Adams, and I'm still learning, too. Take care, everyone.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of A Student of Leadership. Leadership is about who we become and how we help others grow. If you found value in this podcast, share it with a fellow leader and connect with Rob on LinkedIn or leave a review. New episodes drop weekly, so don't forget to subscribe to stay connected. Until next time, keep learning, growing, and leading with intention. Remember, great leaders are made one habit at a time. See you next time on A Student of Leadership.